I'm going to start with a question, and I want an honest answer. Any Taylor Swift fans in the house? Come on, give it up. Whoa, man, I'm telling you, I know where to go. This section right over here, that's a little too excited for Taylor Swift, but I'm going to just go right here for the whole time. Let's be an encouragement for the Swiftie right over here. Come on now, give it up for him. Yeah, there we go. All right, we're good. Well, hey, listen, I know a little bit about Taylor Swift because I've got 3 daughters, and they've all been to her concerts, and my wife too, but I didn't go. I wasn't invited like my gentleman over here, and I didn't get to go, but she is an unbelievable performer, no matter what you think about her. Just think about the statistics for a minute. She's sold more than 50 million albums, 150 million singles. I mean, more Grammys than the Rolling Stones. Time magazine just put her on their 100 most influential people list of 2019. And I just read this, that she is number 1 on the Forbes list of the Celebrity 100. So think about that for a moment. She is the highest paid entertainer on the planet, Taylor Swift. But when it comes to relationships, oh, you guys are lively today, I'm telling you. I didn't get nothing for that last night. It was just like, it's just when it comes to relationships, let's just take a look at what she said when she was being interviewed on CBS Sunday Morning with Tracy Smith. She said this: people go on and on that you have to forgive and forget to move past something. No, you don't. You don't have to forgive, and you don't have to forget to move on. You can move on without any of those things happening. You just become indifferent, and then you move on. Now, the interviewer did this. They asked this question. They said next, well, do you believe in forgiveness? Look what she says next. Yes, absolutely. Like for people who are important in your life, who have added, who have enriched your life and made it better. And also there's been some struggle and some bad stuff too. But I think that, if something's toxic, and it's only, do you like the way I'm saying that? It kind of sounds like her, you know what I mean? Seriously though, for a moment, this is important. She says it like this: if something's toxic and it's only ever really been that way, what are you going to do? I mean, you just got to move on, and it's fine. It's okay. Now, think with me for a moment. She's not the only one that believes that. She's not. Many people think and respond the exact same way, and they would agree with her. I mean, even her new song, I Forgot That You Existed. That's the title. It just shows you what she's thinking, and that, man, I've been hurt, people have done this, and I gotta just get past it, and I'm moving on. The question I wanna ask you today is simply this: what does the Bible say about that? And what are we who are followers of Christ seeking after God, how are we to respond, and what are we to do on this topic of relationships and forgiveness, which comes up constantly? If you have a Bible, do this. Open it up to Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18. The title of the message is Untangling My Relationships. And I'm going to share with you, this may be a familiar passage to you. If not, then I'm telling you, we're all going after it together, and there's going to be some new truths. I'm praying that God will use this. I want to share 5 myths of forgiveness. So these are the things that we think. These are the things that many people believe. These are the things that some of us are still believing or fighting those feelings now. And I'm telling you, it causes difficulty and damage in our relationships. So forgiveness, I like to say it like this: it's the oil that keeps the relationships running. I mean, it's constant. It continues to happen. I wish I could say at the start of this message, man, I got this one down. I don't have it down. And it continues to be a struggle. And as we learn and grow together, myth number 1 for the note taker, go ahead and write this down: forgiveness is negotiable. Hey, this is a negotiable thing. And so that's where we start. That's what Peter says. Take a look with me, because he's got this conversation with Jesus. It starts in Matthew chapter 18, verse 21. If you don't have a Bible, grab one from a seat nearest you. Love to have you follow along, and turn to page 823. Peter runs up to Jesus and he says to him, Lord, Let's just stop right there. Look up here for a moment. It's always good when you're talking to Jesus to call him Lord. Anybody with me? Come on, give me a shout of an amen. It's just like, that's a good term of respect. Lord, Master. How often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? I mean, now how many people, we see the same thing, we think the same thing. How many times am I going to have to go through this? Now, we don't know the backstory. We don't know the background. We can only surmise that the disciples, they're running around. They're just getting everybody upset. And he may be thinking of someone in particular. He may not. He may be thinking about a friend asked that question, so he's asking Jesus like you and I. No, he's probably struggling it with himself. And then he says this, as many as 7 times. So it indicates this wasn't just a pop question that he just came up with on this. He had been thinking about that. Because 7, it's just not a random number. It's what the rabbinic teaching of the day, they said what? They said that you had to forgive the person, and what they said was 3 times. So the rabbis would teach that once you forgive them 3 times, it's like 3 strikes, you're out. You don't have to do it. It's like how many golfers out there? It's like this, 3 mulligans per round. Anybody want that? I mean, we're up for that, but there was a limit. And so Peter, he's negotiating and he's thinking to himself, he's thinking, well, if I just do this, he's reasoning, if I just times it times 2 and add 1, that's, Jesus, he's always raising the bar. That has to be enough. And so Jesus looks at him and what does he say? Verse 22, I do not say 7 times, but 70 times 7. He's like, don't get your calculator out. It's just like, there's no limit. It's just like, it's unimaginable that you would even start count. It's like, stop counting when it comes to this topic in relationships. Stop counting the number of times because forgiveness has no limit. See, Peter was expecting Jesus to look at him and say, you have chosen wisely, young grasshopper. Some people got that. But no, he didn't do it at all. He always raises the bar, especially with this topic, because despite contrary to public belief, there is no limits, and it is not negotiable. It's like the all-you-can-eat buffet. It's you go and you keep going and going and going. It's like what? At the local establishment where you grab a burger and you go up for a drink, and you can get as many refills as you want. How many people remember those limited phone plans? Anybody remember those? It was like, yeah, get ready for this. It was like, this is the amount of texts you can send. That's it. I got a family plan. I got 3 girls. Are you hearing me? There is no limit to the amount of texting. This is never going to work. God's on the 4G forgiveness plan when it comes to forgiveness. Is the network's got to be strong that what? That all of us need to be forgiving. See, forgiveness, contrary to myth number 1, is not negotiable. And when we feel like it is, we look like this. This is how we feel. Come on, been here before? It's like all tangled up in knots. And so you're combing your hair and it's just got to be. That's what it does to our relationships. Myth number 2, we're going to walk through the text, is another one that becomes, think with me of what I mean, forgiveness is natural. It's like the go-to. It's like what we first do. It's okay. Like we just do it and move on. And that's not really what happens. Notice verse 23. Jesus launches into a parable, as he often does, to prove his point. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven, so this is something different. This is what I'm bringing to you, may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him, one servant, who owed him 10,000 talents. Now, interestingly, a talent, if you look in maybe you've got a Bible that has notes like mine, it says a talent is worth 20 years of labor. So if you do the math and you just look at this, he's like 10,000 talents. Well, you do a lot of multiplication. You find out he's talking about an amount that's ridiculous, $10 billion in our day. It's like, it's never going to be able to pay it back. So this debt is unpayable. And look what he says in verse 25. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. Talk about marginalizing. There it is right here in the text. And that people take advantage and sell people off, and that was what was happening in their day. And people are marginalized today. It's a different message. But what was going on? The king was like, I'll cut my losses. That's what I'm going to do. And so that's oftentimes what we think of when there's relational breakdown is, I just want to get out of it with the least amount of pain as I can. So I'll just cut my losses. That's what the king was doing. We as business people do the same thing. It's human nature. The first move is to, as we've seen with that rock star, move on. I'm just going to move on. And I'm going to cut my losses. I'm going to get what I can, and I'm not going to think about it at all. Okay, let me ask you a question. Who's going to see Rambo? Anybody going to go see it? Who's going to shell out that money to see Rambo? It's called The Final One. I mean, Rambo, this is coming out. It's like, this is the final one. Anybody with me in 1982 remember the first one? Come on now, give me a hand raise. Yep, we got some. And there's been 5 ever since. So it's just like, whoa, I don't know. I would suggest Netflix may be a good option here. But seriously, what is it about this movie that keeps people coming back? Well, I'll tell you what it is, and it's not just the blood and the guts. I mean, see through the surface and go a little deeper. It's all movies of this kind. It's #revenge, man. That's what it is. That's what sells. Because that's human nature. Because we want to get revenge. Because we want to do what we can do. Hey, Netflix series. It ran from 2011 to 2015. This is unbelievable. It was simply entitled Revenge. And the tagline was, this is not a story about forgiveness. That's where we're coming. That's where what we think. Hey, I just want to lay it out right now. This has nothing to do with forgiveness. We're going after people, and this is where it is. Why? Because it's not natural. And I'm here to tell you that that's a myth, and forgiveness, when we think it's not natural, it isn't natural. When we think this way, if we think to ourselves that, well, it's just going to come easy and all this, then we feel like this. Let me show you another picture. Anybody had this happen recently? You got your headphones and you got the wires and you're like, oh man, you pull it out of your gym bag and you're just like, what's going on? And you're just like this, and you guys are thinking, we'll get some ear pods. Hey, this is where I live, okay? So stop judging me, and you're going like this, and that's what happens in the midst of relationships that have a false understanding of forgiveness, and where we think it's negotiable and we think it's natural. The relationships get all tangled up. And honestly, this is a message today for mothers and fathers and siblings and family members. And some of us have some deep wounds as we're sitting here, tangled up as a result of what your sister did or what your brother did or what happened with your parents, or this happened and now everybody's this and this way and nobody talks to each other, and where are we going? Am I on topic today? This happens in the church, and we get up, uptight, and it's a mess. Why? Because we believe some myths. We believe, I hinted at it already, let me say it real clear, we think that forgiveness is easy. Hey, just going to do it. And that's what was read at the beginning. It's just going to move on. And notice verse 26, because we get to the heart of the story. Remember, we had a servant who owed a king an unbelievably incredible amount of money that could never be paid back. It's overemphasizing. That's what Jesus does in the story. All preachers do it. So the servant, it says in verse 26, he fell on his knees. So he's on his knees imploring him, have patience with me. And I will pay you everything. And look at verse 27. So king standing up there out of pity for him, the master of the servant released him and forgave him the debt. So here we see it. We see something quite unusual. And so interestingly, that forgave, that word there in its original language in the verse that we're looking at in verse 27, forgave him the debt, it's used 143 times in the New Testament, in the original language. Out of those 143 times, 47 times, follow the bouncing ball here, 47 of the times it's forgive, forgave, forgiven. Out of those 47, there's 38 in the Gospels, and it comes straight from Jesus' mouth, like this one. And so he's either talking about one of two things which makes forgiveness possible. He's talking about the heavenly forgiveness that we all need because our debt's too big, or he's talking about, since you got that, you got to give this, and he's talking about the transaction that we need to forgive. And so verse 27 is an amazing verse. Don't let it slip by if you've been here before. It is the biblical definition of forgiveness, to release a debt. That's it. I mean, want to make it easy today. Today is all about what? I'm not teaching you anything you don't know today. I'm just going to jam you really hard to do it. We got to do this because our relationships get tangled up when we don't. And so what is it? It's to forgive. It's actually to release. So think about that definition like this: to release a person from the obligation to pay. To release a person from the obligation to pay me back. That's what it is. It's almost like this. I like to think of it like this, that it's letting go of the right to get even. I'm going to do what? I'm just going to let go of the right. I got a right here. You hurt me. You really did. You don't know how you did this. I've been thinking about this and you hurt me. And so you're just going to go like this. I'm just going to drop it. I'm going to let go of the right to get even. I'm going to do what? I'm going to take a step back. And I'm telling you, anybody with me, that isn't an easy thing to do at all. Forgiveness is not easy. It's just not. Let me share a story from my own life, and you'll get a little kick out of this. Some of you guys know that Jody and I did a book on marriage, and there ain't a marriage. This is the secret to marriage. Ruth Graham said, the secret to a great marriage is two forgivers. That's what you need. It's because if it ain't going both ways, it ain't going anywhere, because forgiveness is the oil in all relationships, including marriage. It keeps things running efficiently and effectively. I included this story in the book that Jody and I did about relationships and about marriage, and the editor actually changed the story, not made it different, but they cut me out. But they cut me out so that the editor made me look better than I really was. And so I just want to share with you what it was in its original form, because it was a situation involving one of my daughters. I wrote this. I remember a challenging season with one of our girls that lasted for more than a year. It was a difficult time for me as a parent, and any parent's been there. You know that when it's happening to your kid, man, there's just something extra going on. And I wrote as a parent because I was watching from the sidelines, so to speak, as a person of authority in my daughter's life was treating her unfairly. There was nothing that I could do to fix the situation. She was working so hard, proving herself over and over, and had sacrificed so much, but the person in authority seemed to deliberately break her down in front of other people. And as time went on, the person never made it right. I understand how things work sometimes. Some people break you down to build you up. Well, this person never built her back up. It left her feeling at a very young age inadequate and insecure in her personhood and abilities. I was counseled to not take matters in my own hands, but instead to work behind the scenes to coach my daughter on how to speak to this person of authority so that she could learn to resolve this on her own, which was kind of hard. Now, obviously, this wasn't a case of physical or extreme verbal abusiveness, or I would have stepped in for sure, but it was very damaging emotionally. I'm embarrassed. This is the part that they cut out. I was embarrassed to say that this led to many sleepless nights as I wrestled with bitterness and resentment, having a difficult time forgiving this person for the unjust pain that they had caused my daughter. I was not allowing this trial to do the work that God wanted in me, and I missed some blessing as a result. And was patiently waiting for this. God wanted this situation to galvanize my heart to more humility, holiness, and forgiveness. I didn't let it happen that way. And this went on for way too long, and I'm ashamed to admit the difficulty I was having as I would do this. Are you like me? I'd write email after email in my head without ever writing it down. I'd rehearse conversation after conversation in my head that if I see this person, we stop and I see him over at the grocery store and it's just him and me in the aisle, you better believe this is what I'm going to say, man. I had it locked and loaded. Anybody been there? But it never happened. I never had the conversation. Interestingly, God used this trial in the life of my daughter to grow and mature her in her faith and womanhood as she endured this difficulty with so much grace, humility, and perseverance. She reacted one way, constantly giving her life to God and allowing Him to use the situation to grow her. I reacted another way, not allowing this to grow me. I got in the way of what God wanted to accomplish. She leaned into God and became more and became better, while I drifted out and became bitter. That's what forgiveness does. If we don't let go, it just causes more turmoil to us. And so it took me 2 years to learn a lesson that I knew. And so let me turn it to you. I mean, who's the person? What's the situation? Where do you need to let go? Because if you don't, got another picture for you. This is what happens. This is what we look like. This is a necklace for those men who don't know what this is. I've got 3 daughters, and when the daughter comes and says, Dad, can you fix this? What, are you crazy? Who can fix this? I'm like, I can barely, my hand's the size, I can barely open this thing up. Can you open it? I can't even, like trying to untangle the relationship without forgiveness, thinking it's negotiable, think it's natural, thinking it's easy. I mean, it's just not possible. So that leads to the next thing is what we're talking about, forgiveness. Let me give you the 4th myth, that we think that it is optional. And so notice verse 28. As the story continues, but when the same servant went out, just to remind you, this is the one who owed that big sum of money that you can't even calculate, and then he got off of it and didn't have to pay. He did what? He found his fellow servant who owed him 100 denarii. Now, maybe again, you've got you in your Bibles, you see that's what? That's just a simply 1 day's wage is 1. So 100 is like $20,000. And what the point is, it's insignificant to the what? To the 10 billion or 20 billion this guy owed. And so what did he do? How did he respond? I'm sure he responded the same way that he would forgive this debt, right? Well, no. It says he seized him and he choked him, saying, pay what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me and I will pay you. I mean, did you think when he was down on the ground and pleading with him that he would, like the clue phone would go on and say, hey, do you remember, do you have some feeling when you were in this place? And what did he say? He refused, it says in verse 30. And he went and he put him in prison until he should pay the debt. And when his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed. So they went to the master, the king, and told him everything. And the master summoned him and said to him, you wicked servant, I forgave you of all the debt because you pleaded with me. Should you have not also had mercy on your fellow servant? And in anger, the master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all of his debt. So much could be said about the prison that we put ourselves in when we choose not to forgive. It's a prison, man. It's like there's cells, and some of us are in it. And we're trying to break free, and we think getting even will get us free. We think going around the side is going to get us free. And we're just in a prison that is self-induced because of our lack of forgiveness. Hey, let me just make it clear. I told you, you've probably heard this story or read it yourself, and you know where this is going. So what? Let me just. But like this message is like the 101, the back to the basics. Let me just make it extremely clear for those who are listening and watching. Who is who in the story? Where are you? Well, the king is who? That's the Father, right? I mean, that's God himself. He's the one, and this is the kingdom of heaven, so the king is God. Who's the servant that has this huge debt? Come on now, you know who it is. Just point to your neighbor, it's them, and point to yourself, it's you. And it's you and me, and that's who we are in this. And Jesus is saying to Peter, hey man, this is who you are, dog. Come on, let's go. And who's the fellow servants? Well, those are the people around us. And for some of us, it's our brothers and sisters and our friends, family members. It's the guy at work that's just driving you nuts. These are the people in the story, man. That's the person that you need to forgive. And so a lot of times we get stumped on it and we say, in the church, because, it's the church. And so we look at the story. Well, verse 21, sir, it says that Peter asked, how often if my brother sins? So this is just about Christians, right? And, yeah. Primary application is that we as the church should what? Be so forgiving with one another. That it would be so attractive to the world around us. That people would want to jump on this train. But I don't know about you, that's not necessarily been my experience, has it? Like, we're supposed to be modeling this to the lost world, man. That no matter what happens, no matter what he did, no matter what she did, that we would be forgiving of one another. But don't miss it. I don't believe that's the only application. There's certainly a secondary application that whether the person proclaims to be a Christian or not, I think that forgiveness is required to keep the relationships going and to keep things moving. And that's the purpose of the gospel, that we would model that to the people around us. So, again, I don't think we should limit who or what. So this is what we're going to do. We're not done yet. Say not done. But we're leaving space in the service. And so there's some tables in the worship center here up front. and there's a card that's on the table. And so it's a real simple thing. We want you to respond because, as I said, I don't believe that it's about you needing more information. I think it's about you acting on the information you already know. And so we could do it right now. God's probably put in your mind somebody who you need to forgive. You need to let go, and it's causing you more pain. Secular therapists tell us that the emotional stress of this it causes you pain and agony, physically, emotionally, and I would add spiritually speaking. So go to a table at the end. We're going to have us worship songs, couple, and worship team in Naperville. John's going to lead us, and you could go up there, and as you feel led, and there's 2 little places to look, and you can check the box. I need to extend forgiveness to. And this is for you. This isn't for us. You just take it back, and you think about the person. I need to release to the Lord my pain, my anger, my whatever it is, my bitterness, and maybe it goes the other way. I need to ask forgiveness from, and you're thinking now maybe you're the guy that needs to do what? Because of the hurt that I caused when I did this. See, forgiveness is about giving and getting. And what do I mean by that? Well, giving it is that what? We need to extend it, and getting it is we need to receive it. So not only from God, but we need to receive it from one another. And so to receive it, sometimes you got to ask for it. But we're just going to ask you to do this, that at the end of the service, we'll create some space and let the Lord move. You say, well, why do I got to come up? I don't know about you, but I've just learned that, if I respond and actually think and actually, respond to what the Lord does, because it's always a step of faith. And so I write this down, I put it in my pocket, and, this is for me so that I don't forget. This is for me so that God will do the work he wants in my heart. So that's where we're headed at the end. I've got a couple more things to say. Let me show you another picture, though. Anybody up for the picture? This is what it looks like when because forgiveness is not optional. Who's had this? This is like if this is behind your bed, like I'm telling you, there's an explosion ready to happen. This is some of us at work. This is normal. Let's just plug another thing in here, and just, it's so tangled up. This just drives, I hate cords. Cords just behind the TV and everything. It just drives me absolutely crazy. Listen, you're going to blow a fuse in your home. And that's the picture, that this unforgiveness is like a searing coal in the palm of your hand, and the tighter you squeeze, the more that it hurts. And what happens is you're getting ready, you're on overload, and relationally speaking, without forgiveness, there's so much that is happening. That's the jail cell that you're in. Last thing about forgiveness, we're talking about myths. Forgiveness, again, hinted at it. We think it's impossible. Well, that's just impossible. I mean, you don't know what this person did to me. If you knew what they did, and please understand, I understand that, and there's probably some greater degrees of pain and agony that are represented in this room that we could possibly imagine. I'm telling you, you could probably tell your story if you were up here with a mic, and you'd get us all in tears. I know it. I've heard the stories. I mean, the way we treat each other and what was done and what this person did in that situation and that relationship, and you can't believe what they did to me. And I know, but it's not impossible. Jesus uses 3 words at the end of the text, verse 35. Take a look with me. It's the secret sauce. You can miss it if you just kind of skim through. But what does Jesus say at the end of the verse? He says, so my heavenly Father will do to you, what? Lock you in prison. If you not forgive your brother, here's the 3 words, from your heart. That's it. That's the whole thing right there. From your heart. So forgiveness has to come from your heart. Well, what does that mean? Well, I believe it means this, that what? Your heart is a representation of what? In biblically, so your soul, that's that immaterial part that lives forever. We talked about that last week. But from your heart means it's got to come from your mind, your emotions, and your will. And your mind, it's like in your mind, you got to make the choice right now, I'm going to choose to forgive. And it's hard, man, I'm telling you. And I do think forgiveness, I'm not contradicting myself. I do think forgiveness is impossible. Clause, without the Lord Jesus Christ. I think it's impossible. I think it's not natural. I think all these things. I think all these myths. It is. I believe. How do you know? Because that's where I lived. I remember thinking this because I didn't have the power to forgive. And so a heart that forgives is a heart that's been transfused with the grace of God. And something else is living in your veins. And So from your mind, you have to make the choice to let go. From your emotions, you need to feel it to the point where, so many times our feelings lead us, but it's just like, you got to, I know you're hurt. Okay, let me say it like this. How many people, let's just be honest, everybody up for honesty in church? How many people didn't feel like coming today? Raise your hand. Just go ahead, come on. I thank you for your honesty right here, thank you. Appreciate that. You know what? I didn't feel like coming either, so there. I didn't, but I came. And you came, and thanks for being honest. In church, nobody's honest in church but you and me. And you know what the truth is this, is that what? Do you feel blessed as a result of being here? Don't leave me hanging. Okay, thank you. I don't know about the other people. I don't know about this Taylor Swift guy. I'm telling you right now, I've been praying for him the whole time. But seriously, we feel blessed because we came and we had to overcome our feelings. And so you do that with the choice of the will. So from the heart is mind, emotions, and will. And I got to do this. I've got to make the decision. That's the volitional part of you, that I'm going to make the choice to forgive. Now, there's a process in forgiveness. It's the crisis in the process. There's the immediate that I need to do it. That's why we're jamming you to get the card and with your volition that you're going to mark this time and date where you're doing it. And this is your reminder, because what's going to happen? You're going to start thinking, and you're going to start wondering, and you're going to start second guessing, and it's natural for everybody. Say it's natural. It's natural that, but you've already put the stake in the ground. So you're like, you got to forgive me. So you got to take that to the Lord. Lord, I've done this already, Lord, and would you help me with these feelings? Lord, would you please help me to overcome and put my faith and trust in you? So last picture is this. This is what you look like if you choose not to forgive. This is you. Yeah, that's the droopy eyes too. I'm telling you, it's just like, but I don't even need to say anything. That's what it looks like. And a heart that is filled with unforgiveness or an unwillingness to forgive is a heart that's never truly been forgiven. Let that sit. That this power comes from above, and it's not natural. It's something that comes as a result of your love for Christ. And so let me do this. We'll give you some common questions. I've been, pastoring now this church for 19 years since we started, and I've had multiple conversations over the years, many, many, many times. People up front with pain and difficulty, relational situations, and over coffee and in my office. And I don't know everything. I already told you I'm not an expert on this topic. I could just try to help the best I can. But these are the questions that people most often ask me. These are the common questions. So again, we're going to go really basic here, but the first thing is this: how do I ask for it? I think this is mothers and fathers, if you got kids, we got to teach the right way. So many times in the church, people don't do it the right way. Again, back to the basics, the fundamentals. As an ex-basketball player, it's like if I couldn't make a three or I couldn't get going, I just go right 3 feet in front of the hoop, and I would just, follow through. This is what I got to do. Just practice the basics. Teach the basics. Can we model the basics? How do you ask for it? Well, simply do this. This is what you need to say. Please forgive me for blank. You fill in the blanks. We're going to have some fun today. Back to the basics. What is it? Name it. Call it what the Bible calls it. That you just need to say it like that. Please forgive me for. Let's say that together. Please forgive me for. And then second part, this is the part my wife teaches me all the time, is that you need to say, it was wrong of me too, blank. And so in the Zappia house, Jody always says it like this. It's really funny. She says it all the time. It's like forgiveness, or she says, sorry is for accidents. Why does she say that? Well, because people say, I'm sorry. And so, we got 3 girls and they're kicking each other under the table, or how about who's had kids with this? And it's like, on the couch, and the older daughter's pushing the other one off and rolling them on the floor. Why? That's my seat. What do you mean it's your seat? What does it mean your seat? She's in my spot. So then you have this whole thing, and then finally, I'm sorry for pushing you on the floor and punching you in the gut. Jody will say, that's not sorry. This isn't an accident. You didn't spill the milk, okay? You just gave a left cock to your sister, and it's forgiveness. It's sin. Please forgive me for kicking you. It was wrong of me to what? To push you on the ground. I know this is so basic, and you're saying, I'm telling you, we don't do it. I've been in counseling situations, and we don't know how to do it. And it's just not the words aren't the magic formula. Certainly it's the heart, but like, let's get the words right. Teach your kids the right way to do it. I mean, even this week, I'll be honest. I know this. And so I said, oh, Jody, honey, I'm sorry. And she looked at me and said, what, did you spill the milk? No, I didn't. I was really a jerk, okay? I mean, let's learn to do it. Second question is this. We'll put it up on the board, is that when do I grant forgiveness? Well, let's get back to the text. Notice verse 26 and 27. That's when the servant went down on his knees, and what happened next is, and then out of the pity of the master, the servant released him. There's no time gap there. It doesn't say that the king did what? He said, I'll think about it, okay? You just stay there for a bit, and I'm just going to think about this for a moment because you really hurt me. He didn't say this, hey, I'll get back to you next Tuesday or Friday, or I'll shoot you a text. No, it was immediate. And so now how difficult it is when somebody approaches that we would grant forgiveness immediately. And the results of that are what you got to work through with the Lord in your own heart. I've said it's impossible to forgive, at least it's been my experience, truly from the heart, if you don't have the vertical relationship with the Lord. But what about the person who hurt, who got hurt? They need to verbalize back. So again, back to the basics, put it up on the floor. This is what you need to say. I forgive you for. Don't just slough it off. Yeah, sure, it's cool. All right. That's the moving on. I see this. No, it's cool. It's all cool. Like the person who really sinned and really did something and they're really trying to grow, there's power in these words. There's you have so much power. Do you agree with me? The person's waiting for this. They need it. I forgive you for this. I mean, that's so critical. C.S. Lewis says it like this. Let's put it up on the board. To be a Christian is to forgive the inexcusable. Why? Because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. So a couple more questions as we have time. Do I need to forgive the person who doesn't ask for it? What if the person never really asks for it? And I've been in this situation, probably both ways. What do I need to do? Because this is what's happened is you're playing this situation in your mind, and you can't sleep because of it. And you're like, how can this person, what are they, do they not know? No, they don't. They don't know. And they're sleeping like a baby while you're up all night. And so it's like you're playing it in your mind. So what about the person who doesn't ask? What do I need to do? And do I need to grant forgiveness? Well, I think the answer is yes. Some may disagree. Why? Because Jesus must have done it. How else would he, when he was on the cross, say, Father, forgive them for what they're doing? They do not know. How else did Stephen, who models this in Acts chapter 7, he must have done it. How else would he say, Lord, don't hold this sin against them when they're throwing rocks and about ready to kill them? I think you need to. I think for the greater good of the gospel. But what if the person doesn't realize it and they've really caused pain? This is extreme. Listen, this teaching is really important. If the person hurt you beyond, and they're like, they don't even get it. Listen, either you got to do this, you got to be able to roll it off and give it to the Lord and move on because they ain't thinking about it. Or if you can't move on, reconciliation, relationship, so important, then you just need to go to the person. This is really hard. Hey, I just need you to know that when you said this, it made me feel like that. You got to say it. They're not going to come up with it. And the person who offended you may not even realize it, and I've certainly been in this place, and we really want to grow too. Oh man, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. Well, that's not really what I'm looking for. Sorry's for accidents, okay? And please forgive me. And so it's really, again, it's really important. Let's strengthen the relationships we have with our family members and friends, and let's strengthen the church. Good stuff today? How do I forgive when I don't feel like it? Well, we kind of always covered that, but let me just give you the illustration. It's just like jumping off a cliff. I don't know about you. I never feel like it. Does anybody really feel like it? I don't feel like it. I mean, I don't want to. But there's a greater thing that I need to because I've been forgiven. And so it is a step of faith. And so let's not let the feelings rule. Sometimes, though, what happens is that if you be honest with yourself, the reason you don't want to forgive is because you don't want to let that go. Because why? Because you want to use it again for later. And so that's your, you know what, hey, you don't understand this situation. If I let go of that, then I can't grab it when I need it. And so you want it for retaliation. And we all know that that's not the correct motive. You want it for leverage. You got to let it go. Lastly, how do I forgive when I may get hurt again? And that's such a hard question because you don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in your mind. I don't know what happened. Verse 34, think the king ever paid back think the king ever lent this guy money again? No. It doesn't mean you don't have to forgive. It just means that the relationship may change as a result of what's transpired. And that change may mean that the relationship never goes back to what it is. I grieve some relationships in my life that are never going to be what they were because there's been relational tension. But I can't let it put me in prison. This has helped me, this statement. I don't know if it's going to help you, but forgiveness is granted, but reconciliation is earned. And so forgiveness, we got to grant it, but let's just take the time to see if we're going to be best friends and what that's going to look like, and let's just trust the Lord with that. So I already prepped you. This is where we're heading. I'm going to ask you to stand. If you're able, stand with me. It's not over. Service is not over. There's tables around the auditorium. Worship team's going to come forward, and they're going to sing over us. And what we're going to do next is we're going to just take some time, and I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. The first thing is what? One of these 3 options is that you would go and fill out one of these cards, as I said, and take it back to your seat. Come now, don't wait. Just allow the Lord to move in your heart. So thankful for the receptiveness of the hearts here. And then maybe you're going to do this. Maybe you're like, you know, you don't understand. There's just some relational tension that's happening, and I feel like those pictures, man, you put up on the screen, I'm all tangled up. And we're going to have some leaders. I'm going to ask some leaders to come up right now and pray for you. There'll be some leaders right here up at the front, some of our pastors and staff. And then lastly, just, you know, pray. Pray for others who are going through difficulty right now. Please, bow your heads. Worship with us. Let's just let the Lord use this time. And so this is what we call a soft close. That means there's going to be a couple songs. But what that means is we're going to be done when you're done. So please leave quietly when you're done as others want to be prayed for, as others are going through relational difficulty. Let's bow our heads together as we respond. Lord, take all that I have in these hands, your hands, and multiply, God, all that I am. And find my heart, Lord, on the altar. Set me on fire, Lord. We want you to set us on fire for the gospel, for the kingdom, for what's better, what's good. Lord, we release these things to you now, and we ask for your Spirit to move.